had heard stories about humans his entire life. Every species in the Galactic Coalition had heard them. Humans were newcomers to the stars. They had only joined the galactic community 300 years ago, but in that short time, they had built a reputation that made older species nervous. Some said humans were crazy. Others said they were brave beyond reason. A few said they were monsters wearing the skin of civilized beings, had never met a human before. He hoped he never would. That hope died on 7. The mining world had been peaceful once. Millions of workers from dozens of species dug precious metals from its rocky surface, worked as a combat medic in the Coalition Defense Force stationed there. It was supposed to be an easy assignment. Nothing ever happened on 7. Then the Hollow came. The Hollow were the nightmare that haunted every species in the galaxy. They were parasites that moved from world to world, consuming all life they found. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply fed. In 10,000 years, they had destroyed 17,000 civilizations. No one had ever stopped them. The best anyone could do was run. When the Hollow swarm appeared in orbit around 7, the evacuation began immediately. Ships lifted off from every landing pad, carrying refugees to safety. But there were too many people and not enough ships. The Hollow ground forces landed before everyone could escape. This unit was assigned to protect a refugee camp near the old ore processing facility. There were 300 civilians depending on them. 50 soldiers stood between those civilians and death. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, only 17 soldiers remained. The civilians were gone, evacuated on the last transport, but the Hollow had cut off the unit from the main evacuation zone. They were trapped. Commander, a tall with blue scales, gathered the survivors in the processing facility's main hall. His voice was calm, but could see fear in his eyes. Coalition Command has received our distress signal, said, but they cannot send rescue ships through the Hollow's aerial blockade. We must hold this position until they find a way through. How long? Someone asked. Hesitated, they did not say. Everyone knew what that meant. Help might never come. They were 17 wounded soldiers with limited ammunition, surrounded by thousands of Hollow drones. The math was simple. They were going to die. Found a quiet corner and began treating the wounded. It gave him something to do besides think about his own death. He bandaged burns, set broken bones, and injected painkillers. The work kept his hands busy and his mind focused. He was stitching a wound on a young soldier's arm when he heard the explosion. Everyone grabbed their weapons. Commander shouted orders. The Hollow were attacking again, but then heard something strange. The explosions were coming from outside the Hollow's perimeter. Something was fighting its way toward them. Contact on the northern approach, a scout reported. Unknown forces engaging the Hollow. Unknown frowned. Can you identify them? A long pause. Then the scout's voice came back, filled with something had never heard before. It sounded like hope mixed with terror. Humans, sir, it's humans. The main doors of the processing facility exploded inward. Raised his weapon, then froze. Through the smoke and dust, figures emerged. They moved with a purpose that seemed almost mechanical. Their armor was not the shining silver of Coalition forces. It was black and covered in scratches and burn marks. These were soldiers who had seen many battles. 12 of them entered the facility. They swept the room with their weapons, checking corners and shadows with practiced efficiency. When they were satisfied there was no threat, their leader stepped forward. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that seemed to look through everything. Her face showed no emotion at all. She walked straight to Commander and spoke without any greeting or introduction. Captain Park, Terran Marine Corps, we're your extraction team. Blinked extraction, but the blockade. We came through the blockade. Said it like it was nothing special, like punching through an alien armada was just another day at work. We have 18 kilometers between us and the extraction point. My squad will get you there. 18 kilometers through Hollow territory, with wounded soldiers. That's impossible. His expression did not change. We're not here to discuss what's possible. We're here to get you out. You can come with us or you can stay here and die. Choose now. Watched the exchange with growing amazement. He had never seen anyone speak to a coalition commander with such blunt disrespect. But more than that, he had never seen anyone so completely unafraid of the Hollow. Commander looked at his soldiers. 17 tired, wounded survivors with fear in their eyes. Then he looked at the 12 humans who stood like statues, waiting for his answer. We'll come with you, he said. Nodded once. Good, we move in 5 minutes. Anyone who can't walk will be carried. Anyone who can't keep up will be left behind. She paused. I suggest you keep up. She turned and began speaking to her squad in rapid commands. Watch them prepare. There were no wasted movements, no nervous chatter. Each human checked their weapon, adjusted their gear, and took their position in the formation. They worked together like parts of a single machine. One of the humans noticed staring. He was a tall man with a scar running down the left side of his face. His rifle was covered in small marks that realized were tally marks, hundreds of them. First time seeing humans, the man asked. Nodded, unable to find words. The man smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that had found new prey. He said, stick close to me, do what I say, and whatever happens out there, don't stop moving. He patted his rifle. The Hollow are scary, I know. Everyone thinks they're the worst thing in the galaxy. He leaned closer. They're wrong, we are. Felt a chill run down his spine. He had spent his whole life afraid of the Hollow. They were the monsters that ate civilizations. They were the darkness that devoured stars. But looking into his eyes, he saw something that scared him even more. He saw a human who was not afraid of anything. The 5 minutes passed quickly. Gathered everyone at the facility's rear exit. The Hollow were massing outside the front entrance, preparing for another assault. They did not know that their prey was about to slip away. Stay quiet, ordered. Stay low, stay together. We move fast and we don't stop until I say stop. If you see a Hollow, don't scream, don't panic. Just point and one of my people will handle it. She looked at each of the coalition soldiers in turn. Her eyes lingered on for a moment. You're the medic. Yes. Stay in the middle of the formation. If any of my people go down, you treat them first. Understood. Wanted to argue. Coalition protocol said he should prioritize his own soldiers, but something in his voice told him that arguing would be pointless. Understood, he said. Turned to face the door. Beyond it lay 18 kilometers of hell, thousands of Hollow drones hunting for prey, and only 12 humans stood between them and death. Move out, said. The door opened. The night swallowed them whole, and began the longest walk of his life, surrounded by the most terrifying soldiers he had ever seen. He did not know it yet, but everything he believed about the universe was about to change. The Hollow were monsters. Everyone knew that, but monsters, he would learn, could be killed. All it took was something even more monstrous to do the killing. The first 3 kilometers were quiet, too quiet. Moved with the group through dark tunnels and empty streets, his heart pounding in his chest. Every shadow looked like a Hollow drone. Every sound made him jump. The humans did not seem bothered. They moved through the darkness like ghosts, their weapons ready but their bodies relaxed. Led the group with at her side. The other humans spread out in a protective formation, surrounding the coalition soldiers like a living shield. Found himself next to a young human woman. She looked barely old enough to be a soldier. Her name tag said. Her face was calm, but her eyes never stopped moving, scanning every corner for threats. How are you so calm? Whispered. Glanced at him. Practice, she said. Also, being scared doesn't help, it just makes you slow. But the Hollow are just another enemy, she shrugged. I've fought worse. Wanted to ask what could possibly be worse than the Hollow, but before he could speak, raised her fist. Everyone stopped instantly. Silence, then heard it. A clicking sound like thousands of insects moving together, the sound of the Hollow. Made a series of hand signals. The humans responded without a word. 4 of them moved forward, disappearing into the darkness. The others formed a circle around the coalition soldiers. Minutes passed, the clicking grew louder, then heard the soft sounds of violence, bodies hitting the ground, bones breaking, brief struggles ending quickly. The 4 humans returned. Their armor was splattered with black blood, but none of them seemed injured. One of them, a large man named, was cleaning his knife on his leg. Patrol eliminated, he reported to 12 drones, no alarm raised. Nodded, move. They continued forward, stared at the humans with growing amazement. They had just killed 12 Hollow drones without making a sound, without firing a single shot. Coalition soldiers needed heavy weapons and air support to fight the Hollow. These humans had done it with knives. At kilometer 5, they encountered their first real obstacle. A Hollow nest blocked the main path. Hundreds of drones crawled over a massive organic structure, tending to eggs and feeding on stored flesh. The smell was terrible, a mix of rot and something sweet that made one to vomit. Commander crept forward to examine the nest. His face went pale. We have to go around, he said. There's no way through. Studied the nest for a long moment. Then she turned to her squad. Clear a path. A woman with broad shoulders and a heavy weapon stepped forward. Had not spoken since they left the facility. She looked at the nest with an expression that might have been hunger. With pleasure, she said. What happened next would stay with forever. Raised her weapon and fired. Not at the drones. At the nest support structures. The first shot tore through a pillar of organic material. The second collapsed a section of ceiling onto the nest. The third ignited something inside the structure that burned with fierce blue flames. The hollow screamed. It was a sound that should not exist, a chorus of alien voices crying out in pain and confusion. Drones rushed toward the source of the attack, but the humans were ready. They formed a firing line and cut down everything that moved. Watched in horror and fascination, the humans did not fight like coalition soldiers. Coalition doctrine emphasized defense, controlled retreats, and minimizing casualties. The humans attacked. They pushed forward into the chaos, killing everything in their path. Appeared beside, move, he said, now while they're confused. Ran. The coalition soldiers ran with him, following the path that had cleared through the burning nest. Hollow drones lunged at them from the flames, but human soldiers intercepted each one. They fought like demons, their movements fast and brutal. One drone got past the humans and leaped at. He raised his weapon but knew he was too slow. The creature's claws reached for his throat. Then was there. He caught the drone in midair and slammed it into the ground. Before it could recover, he stomped on its head. The skull cracked like an egg. Keep moving, said. His voice was not even breathing hard. They made it through the nest. Behind them, the structure collapsed in flames. Hundreds of hollow drones died in the fire. The survivors scattered into the darkness, their coordination broken. Commander stared at the destruction with wide eyes. You destroyed an entire nest. Reloaded her weapon. We destroyed a problem, now we keep moving. At kilometer 8, exhaustion began to take its toll on the coalition soldiers. They were wounded and tired. Most had not slept in days. 2 of them collapsed, unable to continue. Expected to leave them behind. She had said she would, but instead she turned to her squad. Carry them. The 2 women did not hesitate. They picked up the fallen soldiers, one over each shoulder, and continued walking. Watched Carria, who weighed twice as much as she did. The human woman showed no sign of strain. How asked. Glanced at him. Training will spite. She smiled slightly, mostly spite. They pressed on through the darkness. The hollow had recovered from the nest attack and were hunting them now. Could hear them in the distance. Thousands of drones spreading out to find the prey that had hurt them. At kilometer 10, they found something that stopped even the humans. It was a refugee column. 300 civilians who had been trying to reach the evacuation point. The hollow had found them first. Now only bones remained, arranged in strange patterns on the ground. Some of the patterns looked almost like writing. Fell to his knees. He recognized some of the species. Children, families, people who had trusted the coalition to protect them. The coalition soldiers wept. Some screamed. Others simply stood in shock, unable to process what they were seeing. The humans did not cry. They did not scream. They stood among the bones and looked at everything. Every body, every pattern, every sign of suffering. They burned the images into their memories. Walked slowly through the remains. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something colder. Remember this, she said to her squad. Her voice was quiet but carried to every ear. Remember why we fight. Remember what happens when we fail. Knelt and picked up a small object from the bones. A child's toy. A little stuffed animal covered in blood. I remember, he said. I always remember. Watched the humans gather themselves. He had expected them to be angry. He had expected rage and shouting and promises of revenge. But there was none of that. Instead, there was only silence and a terrible, focused determination. Commander approached. How do you do it? He asked. How do you look at this and not break? Turned to face him. Her eyes were dry, but something in them had changed. Something had hardened. We break later, she said. When the mission is done, when everyone is safe, then we break. She looked back at the bones, but not now, never now. She raised her hand and pointed forward. 8 kilometers to go, move out. The group began walking again, forced his legs to move, one step after another. His mind kept returning to the bones, to the child's toy in his pocket, to the patterns the hollow had made with their victims. He understood something now. The humans were not fearless. They were not machines without emotion. They felt everything, the horror, the grief, the rage. But they did not let those feelings stop them. They used them. They turned pain into fuel and grief into determination. They kept moving forward because stopping meant admitting that the darkness had won. Had spent his whole life running from the hollow. Everyone did. It was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. The humans did not run. They walked toward the darkness with open eyes and loaded weapons. And the darkness, for the first time in 10,000 years, had reason to be afraid. 8 kilometers remained. 8 kilometers of horror and death and impossible odds. Looked at the humans around him. 12 soldiers against an army. It should have been hopeless. It should have been suicide. But somehow, walking beside them, felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt like they might actually survive. By kilometer 12, had begun to understand something important about humans. They were not stronger than other species. They were not smarter or faster or better equipped. What made them different was something inside them. Something that refused to quit no matter how bad things got. The group had been fighting for hours. The Hollow had found them and attacked in waves. Each attack was beaten back by the humans, but each attack took a toll. Ammunition was running low. Everyone was exhausted. 3 coalition soldiers had died despite best efforts to save them. But the humans kept going. They showed no signs of giving up. When their weapons ran dry, they fought with knives. When their knives broke, they fought with their hands. Watched kill a Hollow drone by ramming its head into a wall until its skull cracked. The man's knuckles were bloody and raw, but he simply wiped them on his armor and kept moving. Then they reached the city. Seven's capital had once been home to 2 million people. Now it was a graveyard. Buildings stood empty and dark. Streets were covered in debris and organic matter left by the Hollow. The air smelled like death. Stopped at the city's edge and studied the skyline. Her eyes narrowed. There, she said, pointing at a massive structure in the city center. It looked like a tumor growing from the ground, a mountain of flesh and bone that pulsed with sickly light. "What is that?" Commander asked. Queen Node replied. "The brain of the swarm. Every Hollow on this planet takes orders from that thing." Felt his stomach drop. He had heard of Queen Nodes. They were the Hollow's greatest weapon, living computers that coordinated millions of drones with perfect efficiency. Coalition military doctrine was clear. Never engage a Queen Node without orbital support. The firepower needed to destroy one was massive. "We should go around," said. "Avoid it entirely." Shook her head. "Can't. The node controls the drones. As long as it's alive, it will keep sending them after us. We won't make it to the extraction point. Then we call for orbital bombardment." "Already tried. The Hollow have anti-air defenses around the node. Any ship that gets close will be shot down." His jaw tightened. "We have to destroy it from the ground." Silence fell over the group. Everyone understood what she was saying. Someone would have to get inside the Queen Node and plant explosives. The inside of a Queen Node was filled with parasitic spores that killed any organic being within minutes. It was a death sentence. One of the humans stepped forward. His name was. He was the squad's demolitions expert, a quiet man with steady hands and sad eyes. He had not spoken much during the journey, but had noticed him helping wounded soldiers without being asked. "I'll do it," said. Turned to face him. For the first time saw emotion on her face. Pain. "You know it's the only way, Captain." His voice was calm. "I have the training, I have the explosives, and I'm the best choice." He smiled sadly. "Besides, I'm the slowest runner. I just hold everyone back." "That's not true." "It's true enough." Began removing equipment from his pack, keeping only the explosives and a detonator. "Get everyone to the extraction point. I'll make sure the node dies." Grab's arm. "There has to be another way." Shook his head. "There isn't. We both know there isn't." He looked at his friends, his family. "I'm not scared. I know what I'm doing. I know why it matters." He pulled something from his pocket. A photograph, worn and faded. Caught a glimpse of a woman and 2 children smiling at the camera. "The Hollow took them," said quietly. "On another world 3 years ago, I've been waiting for a chance to hurt them back. Really hurt them." He put the photograph away. "This is my chance." No one tried to stop him after that. One by one, the humans embraced him. Was crying, but she did not make a sound. Pressed her forehead against his and whispered something could not hear. Gripped his hand hard enough to leave bruises. Was the last. She stood before and looked into his eyes. "Make it count," she said. "I will." Turned and walked toward the Queen Node. He did not look back. His steps were steady and sure, the walk of a man who had made peace with death. The group watched him go until he disappeared into the mass of organic matter surrounding the node. Then took a deep breath and turned to face the others. We move, now we don't have much time. They ran. The hollow drones were everywhere, but they seemed confused. The Queen node was directing them toward itself, trying to stop. It was working in their favor. 5 minutes passed. 10. Could see the extraction point in the distance, a cleared area where ships could land. They were so close. Then the world turned white. The explosion was bigger than anything had ever seen. A pillar of fire rose from the center of the city, reaching up toward the sky like an angry god. The shockwave knocked everyone to the ground. Once vision cleared, he saw the Queen node, or what was left of it. The massive structure was gone, replaced by a crater of burning flesh. Secondary explosions rippled through the city as connected organic networks died. All around them, hollow drones stopped moving. They twitched and spasmed, their connection to the hive mind severed. Some collapsed. Others wandered aimlessly, suddenly unable to coordinate. Had done it, he had killed the Queen node. He had broken the swarm. Was staring at the crater. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not wipe them away. He did it, she whispered. He actually did it. Stood and pulled to her feet. Grief later, she said. Her voice cracked slightly, but her eyes were dry. Mission first. Always mission first. They kept moving. The remaining drones were disorganized but still dangerous. Individual hollow could still kill, but without the Queen node coordinating them, they were no longer an army. They were just monsters. Monsters could be killed. The humans fought with renewed fury. Every shot was dedicated to. Every kill was a tribute to his sacrifice. They tore through the remaining hollow like they were made of paper. Ran with them, his medical kit bouncing against his hip. He understood now what drove the humans. It was not hatred. It was not bloodlust. It was love. Love for the people they fought beside. Love for the innocent they protected. Love for the fallen they avenged. Had died so that others could live. The humans honored his death by making sure it was not wasted. By kilometer 15, they had reached the outskirts of the extraction zone. The hollow resistance was crumbling. The creatures attacked in small groups rather than coordinated waves. The humans cut them down without slowing. Commander ran beside. The commander looked shell-shocked. I've never seen anything like this, he said. I've never seen anyone fight like this. Neither have I, replied. How do they do it? How do they keep going after losing one of their own? Thought about's photograph. The woman and children who had been taken by the hollow. The quiet determination in his eyes as he walked towards certain death. Because stopping means their friend died for nothing, said. And they won't let that happen. They can't. 3 kilometers remained. 3 kilometers between them and safety. Behind them the city burned, fire's legacy. Ahead of them the extraction point waited. And the humans, grief-stricken but unbroken, led the way forward. Had witnessed true horror on 7. He had seen the hollow consume innocent lives. He had seen death and destruction on a scale he could not imagine. But the greatest horror was not the hollow. It was watching a human walk calmly toward his own death because he believed it was the right thing to do. And knowing that every other human in the squad would have done exactly the same thing without a moment's hesitation. That was the horror, that was the truth. Humans were not afraid to die. They were afraid of dying for nothing. Give them something worth dying for, and they became the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The hollow had given them something worth dying for. And now the hollow were going to pay. The swarm mind was dying, but it was not dead. Pieces of it remained scattered across 7, fragments of consciousness that still clung to existence. These fragments were confused. They were angry, and for the first time in their ancient existence, they were afraid. The hollow had consumed 17,000 civilizations across 3 galaxies. They had developed a perfect understanding of prey behavior. Prey ran when confronted with overwhelming force. Prey hid when escape was impossible. Prey begged when all hope was lost. These patterns were universal. Every species followed them. Every species except one. The fragments watched through the eyes of surviving drones as the small group of humans pushed toward the extraction point. The math made no sense. 11 humans remained against thousands of hollow. The humans should have surrendered. They should have broken. Instead, they fought harder. The fragments tried fear tactics. They displayed the remains of consumed victims. They broadcast the screams of the dying through every available frequency. They showed the humans what awaited them if they were captured alive. The humans did not slow down. They did not show terror. They looked at the horror and kept moving forward. The fragments were confused. This was not how prey behaved. This was wrong. Did not know about the fragments or their confusion. He only knew that the final 3 kilometers were the worst of his life. The Hollow attacked without coordination, but they attacked constantly. Small groups of drones emerged from every shadow, every building, every crack in the ground. The humans killed them all, but each fight took time and ammunition they did not have. At kilometer 16 they lost. He was a quiet man who carried grenades like other people carried water bottles. Had seen him smile once, when told a bad joke during a brief rest. Now he was surrounded by 15 hollow drones, cut off from the group by a collapsed building. "Go," said through the communicator, "I'll hold them." "We're not leaving you," responded. "You don't have a choice." His voice was calm. "Tell my mother I love her." He pulled the pins on every grenade he had. The explosion took him and all 15 drones. The building collapsed on top of the crater, burying everything. The humans did not stop to mourn. They kept moving. At kilometer 17 they lost. She was the squad's best shooter, a woman who could hit a target at 800 meters in the dark. A hollow drone caught her from behind, its claws punching through her armor. She fell but did not scream. "Keep going," she said as tried to reach her. "I'll cover you." She propped herself against a wall and raised her rifle. Her hands were shaking, but her aim was true. She killed 9 drones before her heart stopped. The 10th drone reached her just as Knife took its head off, but was already gone. 8 humans remained. Then 7, when a sniper drone killed a man named with a shot through the eye. Then 6, when 2 soldiers went down covering the retreat of wounded coalition members. The fragments watched all of this. They watched the humans die one by one, always protecting others, always fighting until their last breath. The pattern made no sense. Prey did not sacrifice themselves. Prey did not die for strangers. The fragments felt something new. It took them a long time to recognize the emotion because they had never experienced it before. Fear. They were afraid of these humans, not because humans were strong, not because humans were numerous. They were afraid because humans refused to act like prey. A creature that did not run could not be chased. A creature that did not hide could not be hunted. A creature that did not beg could not be broken. The fragments sent an order to the remaining drones: retreat, fall back, let the prey escape. It was the first time in 10,000 years that the Hollow had retreated from anything. Notice the change immediately. The attack stopped. The drones that had been swarming toward them suddenly turned and fled into the darkness. The constant clicking of Hollow communication went silent. "What's happening?" Commander asked. Stopped and looked around. Her face showed no relief, only suspicion. "They're running," she said. "Why?" Did not answer, but thought he understood. The Hollow were predators. They fed on fear. They consumed civilizations by breaking their spirit before breaking their bodies. The humans had not broken. Despite everything, despite losing half their squad, despite fighting impossible odds, they had not shown fear. They had shown anger. They had shown grief. They had shown cold, terrible determination. The Hollow did not know how to process that. They had never encountered prey that made them feel like the prey. "Keep moving," ordered. "This could be a trap." It was not a trap. The final kilometer passed without a single attack. The Hollow stayed hidden, watching from a distance as the group reached the extraction point, watching and waiting and feeling something they had never felt before. The extraction ship landed 20 minutes later. It was an ugly military transport, by battle damage and rushed repairs. 2, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The wounded went first. Coalition soldiers helped each other up the ramp, crying with relief. Commander walked with them, his blue scales pale with exhaustion. The humans went last. Only 6 of them remained, and one other whose name never learned. They stood at the base of the ramp, watching the darkness behind them. "Think they'll follow?" asked. "No," said, "not tonight." "Why not?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired beyond measure. "Because we scared them. For the first time in their existence, we showed them what it feels like to be prey." She turned and walked up the ramp. They need time to process that. Boarded the ship and found a seat near a window. He watched 7 shrink below them as the transport climbed toward orbit. The planet's surface was by fire and destruction. The Queen Node crater was visible even from space, a wound in the earth that would take centuries to heal. Somewhere down there, ashes mixed with the remains of the enemy he had destroyed, and in the others lay where they had fallen, their sacrifice unmarked by any monument. The humans sat together in silence. No one spoke, no one cried. They simply held each other and stared at nothing. Approached, she looked up at him with eyes that seemed 1,000 years old. "Thank you," said, "for saving us." We didn't save everyone. His voice was hollow. We never save everyone. You saved 17 of us. 17 lives that would have ended without you. Nodded slowly. 17 against 6 of ours. She closed her eyes. I'll take that trade. I have to take it. Sat down beside her. He did not know what to say. He did not know if there was anything to say. What happens now? He asked finally. Now we go home. We write our reports. We attend the funerals. Opened her eyes and looked at him. And then we find another fight, because there's always another fight. Does it ever end? Smiled. It was a sad smile, worn and weary but somehow still warm. No, she said, it never ends. The darkness is always hungry. There's always someone who needs protecting. She leaned her head back against the seat. But that's okay. That's why we're here, to stand between the darkness and everyone else, to make the monsters afraid. The ship broke through the clouds and into open space. Stars filled the windows, cold and distant and eternal. Somewhere behind them, the Hollow were already regrouping, already planning their next attack, already preparing to consume another world. But tonight they had learned something new. They had learned that humans did not run, humans did not hide, humans did not beg. Humans fought, and sometimes against all odds humans won. The fragments of the swarm mind huddled in the darkness of 7, nursing their wounds and their new emotion. Fear. Such a strange feeling, such a terrible feeling. They would return eventually. They would consume again. It was their nature. But they would never forget this night. They would never forget the small group of humans who had walked through their army like it was nothing, who had burned their queen node and killed their drones and looked at them with eyes full of cold fury. The darkness had found something it feared, and its name was humanity. 5 years had passed since 7. 5 years since watched humans walk through hell and come out the other side. 5 years since he learned what true horror really meant. The coalition had changed in those years. Humans were no longer newcomers to be watched with suspicion. They were allies to be respected. Their methods were studied. Their tactics were. Their soldiers were requested by name for the most dangerous missions. The Hollow had changed too. They still attacked. They still consumed. But they were more careful now. They avoided worlds with human defenders. They retreated when human ships appeared in orbit. The fragments had shared their fear with the rest of the swarm, and the swarm had listened. Stood in the memorial hall on the coalition capital world. Representatives from 100 species had gathered to honor the fallen of 7. The hall was filled with flowers and candles, and the soft sound of prayers in a dozen languages. A massive stone wall displayed the names of everyone who had died. 3,000 civilians, 200 soldiers, 6 humans. Read the human names one by one. Shin, Han, Ryu, Yang, 6 names among thousands, but somehow the most important. Still staring at the wall. Turned, stood behind him, dressed in formal military uniform. The scar on his face had faded over the years, but his eyes were the same, hard and knowing and a little bit sad. I come here every year, said, to remember. I know, told me, walked up to stand beside him. She appreciates it, we all do. Where are the others? Is talking to some admiral, is avoiding everyone, couldn't come this year, another mission, shrugged. You know how it is. And outside she doesn't like crowds. Nodded. He had learned that about humans over the years. They were social creatures, but grief was private. They preferred to mourn alone or in small groups, away from ceremony and spectacle. I want to ask you something, said. Something I've wondered about for 5 years. Ask. On 7, when everything was falling apart, when you were losing friends and facing impossible odds, paused. Why didn't you give up? Why did you keep fighting? Was quiet for a long moment. He stared at the wall of names, his eyes distant. You know the first thing they teach us in training, he said finally. They don't teach us how to shoot or fight or survive. They teach us why we fight. He touched his chest over his heart. They teach us that every life matters, every single one, rich or poor, human or alien, friend or stranger. Every life is precious. But you were dying for strangers, for people you had never met. That's the point, smiled slightly. Strangers today, friends tomorrow. The universe is big and dark and full of things that want to hurt us. The only way we survive is by protecting each other. He looked at all of us, every species, every world. Thought about that. He had grown up in a culture that valued self-preservation above all else. His people ran from danger. They protected their own and left strangers to their fate. It was the logical thing to do, the safe thing. The humans had a different logic, a stranger logic. They believed that protecting strangers was protecting themselves, that every life saved made the universe a little bit better, a little bit safer. It was crazy, it was irrational, it was the most beautiful thing had ever heard. I've told your story to everyone who would listen, said, every species I've met, every planet I've visited. I tell them what humans are capable of, what you did on 7. Why? Because the galaxy needs to know, because the Hollow are still out there and other horrors besides them, and maybe, if enough people learn to fight back instead of running, he trailed off. Maybe the darkness will learn to be afraid, finished. Yes. Put a hand on shoulder. Thank you for remembering, for telling our story, he squeezed gently. That means more than you know. After the ceremony found outside the memorial hall, she was sitting on a bench, looking up at the stars. She had aged in 5 years. There were lines on her face that had not been there before. Her hair had streaks of gray. But her eyes were the same, still hard, still determined, still burning with that cold fire that had first seen on 7. May I join you? Asked. Nodded without looking away from the sky. They sat in silence for a while. The night was clear and the stars were bright. Somewhere out there the Hollow were hunting. Somewhere out there worlds were burning and people were dying. The darkness never rested. I've been promoted, said eventually. They want me to train new soldiers, pass on what I've learned. Will you? Yes, she finally looked at him. Not because I want to, because I have to, because the next generation needs to understand. Understand what? Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with the weight of years. That we're not special, humans I mean. We're not stronger or smarter or braver than anyone else. Any species can do what we do. Any species can stand and fight. She looked back at the stars. But someone has to go first. Someone has to show that it's possible, that the monsters can be beaten, that the darkness can be pushed back. And that's what humans do. That's what we try to do, smiled. It was the same sad smile she had given him on the transport 5 years ago. We're not heroes, we're just stubborn. Too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Too stubborn to give up. She stood and stretched. Her bones cracked and she winced slightly. Getting old, she muttered. You've earned the rest. Maybe, she looked down at him, but not yet. There's still work to do, still people to protect, still darkness to fight. She offered him her hand, took it and stood. Will I see you again? He asked. Probably not. The universe is big and my job takes me to bad places. She gripped his hand firmly. But if you ever need help, if you ever face something you can't handle alone, call for humans. We'll come. I believe you. Good. She released his hand and stepped back. Take care of yourself and keep telling our story. The galaxy needs to hear it. She walked away into the night, a small woman with tired eyes and an unbreakable spirit. Watched her go until she disappeared into the crowd of mourners leaving the memorial hall. He stayed outside for a long time after that, looking up at the stars and thinking about everything he had seen. The Hollow, the death, the sacrifice, the humans who had fought through it all with nothing but determination and spite. 5 years ago, he had witnessed true horror on 7, but the horror was not what he had expected. It was not the Hollow with their endless hunger. It was not the death and destruction that followed in their wake. The true horror was humanity itself, not because humans were evil or monstrous or cruel, but because they were good, because they were willing to die for strangers, because they refused to accept a universe where darkness won. The true horror was knowing that humanity's wrath was the only thing standing between the galaxy and extinction, that these stubborn, irrational, impossibly brave creatures were the last line of defense against the night. And the true horror was realizing that, was grateful for it, grateful that somewhere in the cold darkness of space, humans were fighting, humans were dying, humans were standing between the innocent and the things that would devour them. The galaxy was not ready for humanity, but the galaxy needed humanity, desperately. Turned away from the stars and walked back to his ship. He had his own work to do, stories to tell, species to convince, a universe to wake up. The darkness was eternal, the Hollow were endless, the fight would never truly be over. But tonight, thanks to the humans, the darkness was a little bit smaller. The Hollow were a little bit weaker, and the fight continued. That was enough. For now, that was enough. He thought of his words as he climbed aboard his ship. We're not special, we're just stubborn. Maybe that was true. Maybe humans were just stubborn fools who refused to accept reality. But stubbornness, had learned, was its own kind of weapon. And against the darkness, against the endless horror of a hungry universe, stubbornness might be the only weapon that mattered. He set course for the next world on his list and began composing his next speech. Another species to convince, another planet to wake up. The wrath would be remembered, the story would be told. And somewhere in the darkness, the monsters would hear it and tremble.